Okay. All right. So Google Docs, at this point, we're pretty familiar with, at least in terms of a word processor. Um, very similar to Microsoft Word or Apple Pages, something that the students all have access to, which is great. And even like you can see at the toolbar here, it's a little bit easier in the desktop version to work with. All the same functionalities there, or most of the same functionalities there with the iPad, but a lot of the toolbar up here looks very similar to the layout in Microsoft Word. You can change the font, the style, the coloring, all those different things. And even the toolbar up here is very similar. So what I wanted to focus on today, rather than just the word processor aspect of it, just a lot of the different features of Google Docs that allow you to make it more interactive for students, whether you're creating something or having them create something. A lot of the other different elements that they can bring in, different forms of media, things like that you can use with your classes, and just maybe share a few ideas that way. So part of this goes along with, I guess it's a little bit of a newer concept of Hyperdocs, which is really kind of similar if you remember when web quests were really popular a few
Yeah.
years ago. Um, Kind of the idea that you have all of this information in one Google document, and the students kind of use that document as a jumping off point to go out to different activities. Maybe they watch a video on YouTube or Edpuzzle or something like that, come back and maybe answer a few questions in the document, or go out to a website. um, Maybe they have like a lab or something that they can do, but the document is like one centralized hub kind of organizing everything. So I have a couple links in here that kind of go into this a lot more in depth, but that's just pretty much the basic overview. It's just kind of having those interactive elements in one hyperdoc or virtual worksheet, and the students kind of use that as a jumping off point to go out. And then the things that they do are more self-guided, um, whether they're collaborative with somebody else or not. It's usually like at their own pace, very similar to the way a web quest was designed. So one of the things that I wanted to mention first is the importance of organization. If this is something that your students are going to be doing on their own, the way that the document itself is organized can be really helpful, or it could be really confusing for them. Um, so one way you could organize it, depending on how long of a document it is, could be maybe with a table of contents. So this is pretty easy to include. This is what it would look like down here below. This is actually a table of contents for the document that we're working in today. And the way this works is if you go up here to the Insert tab and down towards the bottom, the very last option actually is to insert a table of contents. So the first option here in black is just the basic table. It has the text of the page and the page number that it shows up on. The one in blue actually has hyperlinks. So what it'll do is it'll take the heading of that section and turn it into a link that the students can actually click and jump ahead to that point. So if I come, maybe I'm coming back to this document and I want to just jump right ahead to part 4 about evaluation and review that, I can click on that and it'll jump me all the way to the end of the document. If this is something that students are working on, again, a longer document, maybe multiple days. I had web quests that would last up to 3 days sometimes, depending on what the students were doing. So something like that, they come back in the next day of class, they can just jump ahead to where they were. So it's pretty easy to insert and create that way. The only thing to kind of be aware of is for this to work, you have to use headings, which is sometimes a little bit different. A lot of times what we'll do is just, if we want this to be a little different, we'll change the font name maybe, or the size of it. Maybe we'll bold or underline it, make it stand out. But for the headings to work, you actually have to use, or for the links to work rather, you actually have to change the style to a different heading. And the headings are going to, they're like a hierarchy among themselves. So when you look at it here on this page, this top one, part one page organization is heading style number 1, top highest level. And then the 3 below it that are indented are heading style number 2. All right, so down here where I actually type that information in, this is heading style 1 right here, and then heading style 2, and then this is just regular text. So if you do that ahead of time, then when you generate this table of contents, this will kind of organize itself for you that way. All right, but that's the only trick to that. Any questions or anything on that part?
You get that heading by clicking on the arrow by my font.
Mm-hmm. Yep, right to the left of the font name.
Yeah.
They have the different styles there.
Is Brian, each one underneath the main one is heading 2, or is one is heading 2, one is heading 3, one is heading 4?
It depends on how much you want to indent. So like in my example here, this part 1 page organization being heading 1, insert table of contents being heading 2. If I wanted this next section to be almost like a subsection of the previous one,
then it would be 3.
Then it would be 3. Yep.
But if those 3 are like a block, then it's just heading 2, heading 2.
Yep. However it works for you to organize. It's almost like outline format. Each level you go in, and it'll actually auto adjust. So if you actually pick a heading 4, if you go that deep into it, it will give you an option for heading 5 automatically next.
Oh, wow.
If you want to keep going in.
Okay.
Yeah, at a certain point, that's might be a little ridiculous, but it will be smart enough to add it for you if you need it. Right, so that's one. The other thing you can do is to organize content using a table. And I like this option a lot, especially for shorter documents. For me, like if I want to space things out, it's a lot easier. I've done it in the past where you type a sentence or a phrase on one side and then you keep hitting tab until you get to almost the right hand side of the page, and it's pretty close. But with a table, you can be a little bit more exact with where the text and everything is laid out, as well as the size of the table, the coloring of the table, and things like that. So tables, again, are pretty easy. You just go to the same tab up here and insert, and the second option down is for table, and you can pick as many columns, and again, this will be smart enough to keep going out if you need it, as many columns and as many rows. So we just pick a simple 2x2. So in each cell of the table, you can select whether you want it, the text left aligned, centered, right aligned. So sometimes, for even like a matching quiz or like a matching section on a worksheet, you could quickly do like something like that, where you have the options here for the student to fill in, and then the answer stem on this side, maybe something like that, maybe not. But you can adjust that pretty quickly, as well as change the location of the text in each box. And then if you go to right click on the table and go down to the table properties, you can adjust certain aspects of the table. So one trick that I like to do a lot is just, once I have the information in there, like I'll pick on this one, I'm just going to highlight everything in here, right click, and go to table properties. If I change the table border to white, the border disappears, and you have this text here, and it looks like you can line it up perfectly the way you want it every time. And that's all you're doing is just hiding it. You can see when you highlight it, the little lines are still there. So that's one thing. Sometimes, depending on the assignment or something like that, I might hide the the lines of the table. You can also change the background color for the cells here as well. The alignment of the whole table and the alignment of the cells. So that's something that I did down here. This table, I shrunk a little bit so it defaults to the full width of the page. So this table is a little bit on the smaller side. And then what I can do is if I go to table properties and the table alignment over here, I can move it and center the table right in the middle of the page if I needed to. And then for this one, sometimes formatting by color, if you have maybe part of your directions are to view a video or something like that, and then you have maybe 3 questions that go along with it, you could have a link to the video or a picture that you want the students to view and answer questions about. Over here, you can keep adding lines and have a couple different questions. But with this all being like a darker blue and a lighter blue, it might help them kind of group those concepts together, at least visually. And the nice thing is, if you do this and you share it digitally, you don't have to worry about color copies and all that kind of stuff. And then one last thing that I like to do is sometimes using a single cell as a place for students to respond with their work. So I might have a question like this and then just insert a simple 1-by-1 cell. So if I go to insert table and just pick a regular 1-by-1 block, it'll default to this whole space. But if I right click and go to table properties, and I'll move it to the middle, and then what I'll do is I'll change the dimension to like 5 inches, we'll say. And now it brings that space. So I have my question, and then the student's answer goes in the block. And what's nice about this is as they continue to type, it will continue to expand the block. So all their work will always be contained inside that space. So then for me as a teacher going back later to review it, it's a lot easier because I can just look for those blocks and see the answers that are filled into those blocks. It's a little bit quicker for me to assess that way. All right, so I have a couple of examples of how I've used some of these things with my own class. So this one is back when we first closed and we were given students lessons for quarantine. I actually did one lesson for one day. It was a little on the longer side, but what I did was I had included a table of contents here for everything that was in this lesson. So I had my own little notes section, which for me was just my musings of, what I thought was important for that section, and then a little video or demonstration that they had to watch, and then an application process, something that they had to do, and then any resources that were available. So they could go back. They had all week to do it. They could go back and jump ahead to any of those things. So, below I just had a couple little things for them to do in each section. So that was one. I've also done it with matching sections. So this was just a simple table that I changed the background here to like a light gray. So you kind of saw it, but it wasn't overwhelming. And then students here had to identify whether each device was an input device or an output device, and then just put their answer over here on the right-hand side. But this way I was able to bring in images a little bit as well. So they were able to have that form of media in there. And then I had another example. This was a lab where students were more in like a station rotation kind of class setting. And they used each of these phases. They would kind of go around from one station to another. And this document was basically their entire, this is the longer version, but this document was their entire, guide for the 2 days that they were working on this lab. And I used a few different things. I kind of color coded each station, all the questions and everything that went along with it was a different color, just to kind of help break it up a little bit.
Brian, hi, it's Marcia. Did you
Hey,
do
Marcia.
that right away? I'm sorry, I'm late. I
No,
apologize.
that's okay.
Hi, everybody. No, did you just type it all in black and then go back in and change it, or did you do it to start with? Like,
No, I typed it all in first.
Okay, you just typed it all in first and then went back and changed it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But this is one, here they had to respond in a chart, but here I had my question, and then as they typed their answer out, it just kind of grew in that box. And then for me, it was really nice because I went back and checked, and I just had to check these boxes and see the responses in there. And this box here, it was a little bit easier to, to kind of quickly review those responses.
Does that do that automatically when you put that in there, like that it would accommodate the size of the text and the the amount of information that the student puts in there?
Yep, automatically it'll just keep growing as they type.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. All right. Another thing you can do is a checkbox list. Again, I don't know how necessary this is, but some people prefer to work with checkboxes or to see, like the tasks broken down that they have to complete. And this is just one that you can, where the students could kind of check off as they go. So really all this is a bulleted list, and over here on the bullet options is an option for just empty boxes. So what you can do is set up your bulleted list and use that as the option for the bullets. And then when you get to one that you want to change to a check mark, you can double click on it to select it. And then when you right click, you can change it to a check mark. Again, not sure how necessary that is for some people, or maybe even our grade levels, but for some students, breaking it down into those individual tasks, being able to check things off like that might be a little bit more helpful. I've used it with more with like Mary Lou and Dana, kind of working collaboratively with a couple of kids in my class that see them. That way, like for Mary Lou and Dana, if they had a couple things that they needed to do as they came in, I could kind of check them off, and we just kind of used it back and forth that way. That worked for us for those one or two students, but just wanted to mention that. Then the next part is probably going to be the most important, most interesting, is the idea of the different types of content that you can insert into these documents. So images, I showed you this example of adding images. They don't have to be in a chart, but they can be. But if you kind of give that opportunity for students, they can interact with different types of media. I used to have an activity where I had a list of students, or a list of questions for students to answer about the Washington's Crossing painting. So that would be something that would be really nice to just put that image in here and then have those questions maybe alongside of it, or something like that. So that's pretty easy to do. If you just go to the Insert tab again, and there's an option, very first one, for images, you can actually upload them from a few different places. So if you have them saved on your computer, maybe in your pictures folder or downloads or something like that, if you were to click that, it would bring up the normal download icon, or download folder. I don't know if you can see that on my screen or not, but you can also search the web for pictures. So those will actually come up over here, and you can search for anything that pops into your head, and that'll actually show up right in here, and you can click it and insert it right away without actually having to go out to Google image search, come back again. And the ones that do show up there are labeled for reuse, Creative Commons, and all that kind of stuff. And then you can also insert photos from Google Drive. If you have anything saved in Google Drive, you can insert them there as well. And just, keep in mind anything that I'm saying you can do, your students can do as well. So if there's anything that, they might have pictures of that you want them to share, if they're in Google Drive or on their iPad, they would be able to insert those images for you to see as well. All right. Drawings and shapes are another thing that you can insert. If you were to go to the Insert tab and go to Drawings, this is a feature that is very similar to the drawing tools in Microsoft Word. It's just in a slightly different location. So all the same things that you could do in Word, where you could draw different shapes, change the color, and all that kind of stuff, you can do that here as well. And then when you save and close it, like if I just do a simple, let's say I was going to do like a little flow chart, and let's add an arrow and another box there. Something simple like that. If I were to save and close, it would actually insert it right there in the document. So if there was something there that you wanted to maybe draw, or something maybe that you would use the drawing tools for in Microsoft Word, you can do it here in Docs as well. You just have to, it's a little extra step. It's not in the toolbar like it is in Microsoft Word. You just have to go to Drawings to add that in. Sorry, John, did you have a question?
I do. So the students, when you create this document and then you allow the students to quote view it, they have to know to make a copy of it to do these things where they can add information or whatnot, or because if, like in my mind, if you just put it to edit, as soon as they change it, it changes for everybody else.
Right. So there's two ways to do that. And actually I have that down here at the end, but
Okay.
if
I can wait.
Okay. But you're right. If you give them the ability to edit, they'll change it for everybody. So if they view it, they have to make a copy first to interact with it. There's also a way to force them to make a copy. So when they open the link, they can't see it until they make a copy of the document first.
Oh, okay.
So it prompts them to do it. And that might even be the easier way for something like this. All right. So I'll show you how to do that at the end, though. Definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. The other thing that you can do with...
Brian, sorry, I had a question.
Oh, no, go ahead, Marcia.
Where did you go? I'm sorry. Where did you go to the drawings thing? Because I might have looked away for a second when you said
okay. So that's under the Insert tab?
Yeah, because it's not on there where you usually see it on the toolbar. That's okay.
Oh, yeah.
You got to Insert. Okay.
Yeah, so Insert and then Drawing.
Okay, all right. That's all I want to know. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say the other thing that you can do with drawings is you can actually insert
an image.
Images, and then you can annotate them. So if I do that, let's see if I can get the same picture there. So if there were certain things that I wanted to point out to students,
And
or
put
if
like
there
a
were certain
caption.
things. Sorry, what was that, Marcia?
And then like put a caption underneath,
You could put
you
a
could do that
caption.
too. Okay.
Yep. If you wanted to kind of draw over it with a shape, and you wanted students to point out certain things, you could draw over it. And what I'm going to do is just change this a little bit so that there's no fill. And then the border outline is, let's say, bright red, because that'll probably show up pretty good. And maybe I'll change it so it's a little bit bigger.
In other words, who's in the red box? Who's the figure in the red box? Or what do you
Yep.
notice about that figure? Okay.
Yep. So maybe like, George Washington would be obvious, but maybe
Right.
not so much over his shoulder there.
Right.
And you could shrink that down so it's a little bit more clear which one you're pointing at. Or, you could as well, take that box, you could add a line out here, and maybe I'll change that to be the same color so it blends a little bit better. And now I can add a text box.
Right.
And over here, I'm just going to put that text box, and now I'm going to label. and maybe just adjust that a little bit. But then you can label, or you could leave this as a blank.
Right. And say who's
And
that figure.
number one.
Right.
Yep. And then, students would be able to make a copy of the drawing and fill in certain things like that. And you could actually add a box to that, so it's a little bit more obvious that you have an answer there or something.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then save and close, and it'll actually show up right there inside the document with everything else. All right.
Great.
And
Thanks.
then the another thing that you can do is inserting links. So this is something that I did way up here at the beginning. If I go all the way back, this word right here in the paragraph, and these 3 titles here, those are live links that will take you to a website. If you click on them, or if students were to click on them, it'll take them somewhere. So that's something that you can do pretty easily. If you have websites that you want to direct students to, or if you have YouTube videos that you want to direct students to, all you have to do is find that website. Let's just go to, we'll pick on Google real quick. Up here in the search bar, copy that link, and then when you go back to your document, you can highlight on that word, and you could go, the longer way would be to go to insert and then down to link, and then you could paste it right there in the box. And that would turn that word into a hyperlink that your students could click. The other option would be a little bit quicker, is if I were to highlight that word and on my keyboard hold the control key and press the letter K, brings up that shortcut to insert a link, and then I can put it right in there. So control K would be a little bit quicker.
Does that work for other things too? Like if you're just doing a Word document and stuff, it works for that too?
Yeah, the control K is universal, pretty much.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so if you were doing that Word, or if you were doing that in a lot of different Google tools, like it would work the same in Slides or Drive or anything like that.
Or Classroom or anything like that. Okay, great.
Yep.
Good to know. Good to know.
And then, just remember that anything that's on the web has a link to it. It has a web address. So any website, any YouTube video, and even a file in Google Drive. Down here a little bit farther, I have another Google Doc that related to this topic. So I went up here and got the shareable link. When you click the share button and you copy that link, you can use that and hyperlink from one Google Doc to another one, just by, if I were to highlight a word, now that I have that link copied, if I go here, this is that big long Google Drive shareable link that would take me to the same document that I'm currently in. So even if you have all these different Google Docs, maybe you have different things broken up that you want students to go to, you can link them all together that way. So that's another option as well. Videos, unfortunately, can't be inserted directly into Google Docs. You would just have to provide a link, like I mentioned a second ago. If you were to do this in Google Slides, you can actually embed YouTube videos within a slides presentation. So students are moving from one slide to the next. One of the slides that they go to could actually have a YouTube video embedded in it. But for docs, at least for right now, that's not a possibility. So I just want to mention that. The one thing that's nice, though, is if you were to do this, a lot of these same features, you can do the exact same thing in Google Slides. But if you were to put a video into a Google Slides presentation, you can actually specify the start and end time. So if you want students only to watch like the first 5 minutes of a video, you can actually have like little sliders that you can change those timings for.
Where do you find those little sliders?
So that would be, let me open up let's go to, all right, so I'm going to add a new slide. So you see here in Google Slides, the insert options are pretty similar, but they do add video,
Right.
which isn't available in Docs. So if I were to click that, and I could search YouTube for videos right here, or I can go out to YouTube and find the link. But if you just select the video and you put it in here, all right, now this is a 14-minute video.
Mhm.
Over here on the right, under format options, I could start it at 1 minute and 30 seconds. Let's say that's after the intro, and I wanted them to only watch it to 4 minutes and 36 seconds or something like that. Then when students hit play, it'll start here and it'll only run until that ending point.
That's great. So it's on, once you insert it, it's on the right-hand side. It says format options and you put in timings.
Yep. And if you were to close this, Joanne, you can always get back to it. If you click the video to select it, right up here, format options will show up, and you click that,
Okay,
and it'll come back.
thank you. That's
Yep.
great.
Yep. All right.
And so, and that's only in Google Slides that you can do that?
For the video, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully one day in Docs as well, but not yet. Okay. All right. Any questions so far on the content piece?
Nope.
Okay. And then the last part, or one of the last parts, is has to do with distribution. So how are we going to get this out to students? So, probably either Google Classroom or Sapphire would be, one of the two easiest ways. If you're a Google Classroom user, when you create an assignment, you can just search your Google Drive for that document and you can attach it right there to that assignment. If you're using Sapphire with your students, then what you would do here in the document first is go to share, and this anyone at Allentown Central Catholic with the link can view is good. And what you would do is you would copy this link. All right. And what this means is the students have to use their @acchs.info email address to be able to access it. They won't be able to use their personal email address. So when you copy this link, it gives you that little pop-up that says the link was copied. And then when you go into your Sapphire page, and let's hide preview, when you go to add a new item, link is one of the options, and you can put that link right in there. So then when you put the title in and save it, when students click on that title, it'll actually take them to your Google Doc. All right, so I'm going to close that and not save it. But that was how, this is just my online instruction stuff for my class, but each one of these is a Google Doc. So when you click on it, it takes you to just that actual Google Doc for the students. All right, so that would be another way that you could share it. Now, John asked a good question about students and accessing it. So this, sharing it by default, they can only view. Now, if you change that setting, you only have options of viewer, commenter, and editor. And if they edit, they change the document for everybody. So you don't really want that. So if you leave it as a viewer, what the students can do is once they open the document, they can't really interact with it yet. They could open links, but they couldn't type in it. So to change that, what they would have to do is go up here to File, and then they would have to go to make a copy. And what would happen is in their Google Drive, they would have a file that says copy of whatever the file name is. And then they could
So they can only
that one.
change it on their end then, Brian, right? They can only change what's on their copy. Do they
Correct.
submit that then to you as with their answers on it? Is
Mhm.
that how that works?
Yep.
So if
Yep.
I insert something like this in Google Classroom,
Mhm.
I mean, put like a Google Doc, can I do that? Put a Google Doc within a Google Classroom assignment?
You can. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And,
so if I do this, then they have to copy it, like John said before, like you said before, and then resubmit what they copied. They can't change this. They can't edit it. Okay.
Right. Yep. Yeah, they can't edit the original. As long as they only have view access, they can't edit the
Okay.
original.
Is it,
Um,
by default,
Where,
is it on viewer only? Is that like the default one?
yeah, view is default.
So then they would have to make a copy.
Correct. Yep. All right. The other thing that you can do is, I'm just going to open up. Let's see if that's still the same. Yep. All right. So I just opened up Notepad real quick. Can everybody see that blank in the middle of my screen?
Yes.
yes.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste. This is the link, the URL that the students would click to access it. There's a couple tricks with Google. You can manipulate this URL and make it do certain things. So what you could do is when you paste this, and this could be in Sapphire, you could do this work. I'm just doing it in a Notepad, so it's a little bit easier to see. But this last piece, everything that's /edit to the end, if you change that to /copy, all right, so all I did was just change, oops, this last piece of /edit ? All the way to the end to just /copy. What happens is if I'm going to take that and use that now to just make sure you can still see my screen. All right, I'm going to go to that link instead. And what it'll do is it's going to ask me to sign in. So let's do a different account. So it's not the one that owns it. It's like a student account. And now what it says is, would you like to make a copy of the document? So I can't even see it yet. And as soon as I click this button, now in my dummy account here, I have an exact copy of the original document that I can edit, manipulate, whatever I might want to do. All right, so that would be one way to get it to the students, would be when you go here to share and
So
copy
then you're
the
only
link.
changing that. You're not changing your original, just that copy that you put on there. Is that what you're doing? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So this actually takes the step out for the students to have to go in file and make a copy, which they can do and it won't take that long. But this takes that step out of it. And for the students, as soon as they click on the link, it prompts them, do you want to make a copy?
Brian, does every URL end with that /edit ? I never noticed that. Every single one.
Yep. So yeah. So
one you get rid of edit ? And everything after it, and you just type in copy, and that's their link.
mm-hmm. Yep. And it'll work the same for Google Slides. Any Google document, if you change that from /edit to /copy, it'll prompt them to make a copy of it.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, when you said, and then this would allow the students to submit it. So would they end up when they can't submit parts of this? In other words, they'd resubmit the whole document. You know what I mean? Like if you have part of this as an assignment,
Mm-hmm.
and you just can you just have them hand that part in or no?
So
or is that difficult?
So they would share the whole document back with you.
Okay.
So depending on how much it is, like if I had, let's say this one from when we were closed down and, I had my notes and all that stuff. Let's say that I had some questions and things here at the end that I wanted them to answer. Unless they, deleted all of this stuff and just gave me the questions, then I would get this entire thing back. So what I would do is, if I was using those answer boxes like I mentioned before, John, what I would do is I would just scroll past all of this stuff,
Right.
and then I would just look at those things specifically. But you're right, it would, with having an exact copy of it like that, you would get the whole document back.
And where would they submit this?
So they could do Sapphire Dropbox. If you're a Google Classroom user, they can reattach it to an assignment in Google Classroom. You know, if we
just like any other assignment.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So I can show you if I'm still logged into Sapphire. So this is one that students had to do. Let me go back a level, or is it going to kick me out? Okay. So this is one, the students had a Google Slides presentation that they had the questions in. Same concept, just a different format. So that was one where they submitted the link, and then if I scroll down, you know, his work is all there in the boxes. So that's one that I can just click on and be able to access. All right, so what they did was they took that link, you know, they worked on it, on their copy of it. They went to share, and they copied the link for their document, their copy that they manipulated. And then they pasted that into the Dropbox. All right, and then I was able to click on the link that goes to their copy of the document to be able to see it. So that was one that was hyperlinked. You know, Shane made it a little bit easier for me. You know, you have another one here that same idea, but this is just text. This isn't actually like a link yet. So I could copy this and paste it in the search bar up here at the top, and it would take me there. The other option is if I highlight this whole thing like I were going to copy and right click, I can do this go to, and it'll take me right there in a new tab.
Hey, Brian, can I ask you a question relevant to that?
Sure.
What's the difference when my students submitted work to Dropbox? Some of them, it was like a link, I click on it. Others, it was black, and I'd have to highlight it and go up and put it in the window. What was the difference in the way the students submitted to make it do that?
So when they went here in the text box, and this is the feedback box, but it should still work the same way. If they just did a simple paste, it comes in as just text. Mm-hmm. If they went the extra step to, where is the button here, to insert a link.
Okay.
And then they would have to put in the URL. Then it changes it to blue.
Okay.
So it's one extra step, and some of the students know it, some of the students don't.
Okay.
Or some of them have figured it out, some of them haven't, however that worked. But
this is what we talked about the other day, Brian, about trying to get into some consistency because of, like I said, having trouble opening some of these because of how they input them in there. That we're going to have that consistency. That's kind of what we talked about the other day, right? About that.
Yeah. And then
so they all do it the same way, so you're not like you can't open it.
Opening some pictures, opening some
right.
PDFs, yeah. But this is one way that, you know, rather than copy paste or however, if you just do that right click and go to, it's a little bit quicker to open. You know, and that was kind of the feedback I got from some teachers, and I've asked Sapphire about like a mass download of all files, because if the students put PDFs up there, you have to download them, open them, look at them, close them, give feedback. At least if it's the links, or, you know, somehow linked to Google Drive, even if it's a PDF in Google Drive, at least if it opens in the new window, it's a little bit, the workflow is a little bit easier for that part, and grading and all that stuff. All right, so that would be, you know, one good way to distribute. You know, you can give them the option to view, but if you take that little extra step and change the URL to /copy, then that'll prompt them.
Can that part be done after, let's say you're posting this link on a Sapphire page in the class portal? So you can copy the whole link, and then you change it to copy, and then you can rename it right there? Is that the order of events? First, you just put it in Sapphire, then you change it to copy, then you can change the name to homework sheet or whatever.
Yep. So right here where I paste the link in Sapphire, see how it says it still has a slash edit down here at the end? I can just change that to slash copy right in there. Yep. And then I can just put.
So it's best to do that step right there so you don't forget, I would think.
I would think, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least it would be one less thing to.
One less thing to do, right?
Okay. All right. And then the last part, evaluation submissions, we kind of talked about this. So, another thing too is with the size of the Dropbox, the one nice thing is with putting a link in the Dropbox, like my students did here in the example, this doesn't count. Like whatever the file size is as it's sitting in Google Drive, it doesn't matter to Sapphire. Sapphire just sees this little bit of text. So, for students who said that they had trouble with the size of the Dropbox not being big enough to take the assignment, especially as they were doing videos and PowerPoints and all sorts of different things. If they get that file to Google Drive first and can share the link, then that eliminates that whole worry about whether or not the Dropbox will be big enough to accept the assignment. So that is one advantage to that. And then a couple other things that you can do as well. So with revision history, you can see the changes that are made to a document. So there's a couple things that I've mentioned off and on over the last couple of weeks, but one of them is the viewer trends, which is up here in the top right corner by the share button. And the viewer trends allow you to see, this might not be the best one because nobody's looked yet, but they allow you to see who's accessed the document and how recently it was accessed, as well as the number of viewers that have looked at it. So, that would be one way to kind of track students who are accessing your documents, things like that. And then right up here next to the help button, where it lets you know how long ago the last edit was, this will let you see the version history. So if you click on that, it'll show you your current document here. And, today, June 22nd, if I break this down at, all these different times, these are when different changes were made. So as we were working through this document here today, I could go back to, at 10:10 a.m., it should highlight it in blue. What were we doing at 10:10? Maybe I deleted something then.
So when you're doing this, you could actually give them the Hyperdoc and say, okay, I want the first box done by this date, and you can see the progress is what this is for then, Brian. You can kind of see how many kids have done what they were supposed to do for that part, and then, the next box is the second part, and that's due another day. So you could do that with this, correct?
Yes. So especially if you were giving them like a group project where they were working together, you could see who was doing what and when.
And who wasn't doing anything, unfortunately. Okay.
Yeah, so, like right here at 10:09, this is when I added this, little 4-block table in here, and then at 10:10, if I go down, I changed the location of the line. Like I moved it around a little bit. So in addition to that, you can also restore a previous version. So if changes were made and you want to go back to a previous version, that would be a quick way to just kind of like time travel almost backwards to a previous version of the document.
But you have to be in this section, right? Correct, to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, revision history will let you do that. The only thing to keep in mind is the revision history stuff doesn't work so well if something was copy and pasted. So like if students were to maybe type something up in Notability, copy the whole thing and paste it into Google Docs or something like that, which sometimes happens, there really won't be any version history. What will happen is you'll have the very first date and then everything, all the text will be there at once.
Okay.
There won't be like any kind of breakup to like a progression of the work. The other thing is file uploads. So like if they work on a document, again, in Notability, let's say, and then upload the PDF to Google Drive, you won't really see a file history with that. But if they do all their work in Google Docs, then you can kind of track that, all the steps and everything along the way.
Okay.
All right. It's not an absolute, I would be careful about like nailing kids for cheating or copy and pasting stuff.
No. Just so you could see progress. I'm usually just interested in progress. So that I know that they're not waiting till 10 o'clock the night before, oh, gee, I got to start this, which is what a lot of them do. But, that you're seeing some kind of progress. That's what I would really be interested in. Not necessarily like you said, oh, you're going to lose 5 points because you didn't work on it on this day. No. Right. I don't have time for that.
And then one last thing I wanted to mention is the idea of commenting and suggesting for students, especially because whatever happens, any kind of online interaction, blended, totally, whatever it is, feedback is really, really important for students for improving, and even face-to-face feedback is important. So one of the things that you can do right here within Google Docs is you can make comments and you can make suggestions on students' work. So one thing you could do is you could highlight a whole sentence or even just a word within that sentence. I could just take a word right here, and then up here in the top toolbar, there's this little, it looks like a speech bubble with a plus sign. There's also a shortcut out here on the side to add a comment. And then what you can do is you can click that button and you could write a little comment like maybe check spelling or something like that if it was misspelled. And then that comment shows up here, and the student can then resolve it. They can go back and they can fix it or whatever it might be. Or I could highlight the whole sentence and comment. And then if I comment, it can develop a reply, like a whole discussion thread almost within this document. So you could kind of go back and forth with students if you really wanted to or had to. If they could ask questions like, oh, well, could you clarify what you mean? Something like that, and kind of go back and forth. So that would be one option. The idea of a comment bank might save you time. This is, I just quickly jotted down a few ideas, but sometimes especially when you teach the same subject for a while, you kind of know like where the students are going to be caught up with certain things, and maybe you can kind of preemptively figure out what some of those comments are going to be that you want to, or that you'll be commenting pretty frequently. So just going to make sure you can still see. So what I did was split my screen. So I have my original document on this side and my comment bank on this side of the screen. But then what I can do is, as I'm going through and reading their assignment, I can go here and add a comment, and then I could just kind of pop over here to my comment bank and just kind of do a quick copy and paste. And now I'll just bring this up full screen, but the comment bank feature, if you were to kind of develop your own there of things that you would commonly put in, it could even be positive, it doesn't all have to be constructive, but that might help save you some time as well.
Yeah, because it's a lot typing those in.
Right,
It's a lot
exactly.
of work typing those in.
Yeah. And then the other thing you can do is within that comment, if you use this @ symbol and their email address, it'll actually notify the user of the comment. So if I were to put in a comment here and type in the same thing, and then I could put it in the end or in the beginning, but if I started to type at that email address, all right, what I can do is actually assign it. And what will happen is the person will be notified, and then they'll be the only one who can mark it as being done. So I would actually get an email notification that would say you have a new comment, and it would actually have the comment in the email and it would have the context, like it would have this whole section up here as well as the comment that was made. You know, this is something I would say to use sparingly. If you have 40 comments on a page for students and you tag them in every single one, they're going to get 40 emails from you about all these little changes that need to be made. So maybe if you have just like general feedback at the end, like you could put a comment in for all these little things throughout the document, but then if you had general feedback at the end, you could tag them in that, and it would let them know that you added some feedback to their document. So that would be with comments. And then the other way that you could make changes would be with the suggestions feature. So that would actually be up here in the top right corner underneath, like where my little icon is. Right now I'm in editing mode. I'm editing the document. I'm making changes directly. You could change that to suggesting. So then whatever changes you make become suggestions for students. So if I wanted to, let's say, get rid of this, and I hit backspace, it puts a line through it, and it pops up over here almost as like a comment, where my suggestion is maybe delete that phrase, but it doesn't actually take it out yet. So editing, if I were to go and backspace that, it would delete it, it would be gone. But suggesting it for the students puts this over here, and then I could add a little bit more if I wanted to in the reply. But anything that you do, like if I so now it's saying that this part that shows up in green, I'm suggesting that that should be there instead of that. Not the best example, but I wasn't feeling too creative at the moment, I guess. So suggestions would be another way to kind of provide feedback for students that way. Okay. All right. That was most of what I had for today. I know I went through it kind of quickly. I just wanted to kind of make sure that I mentioned a couple of these things. Like I said, we all kind of know Google Docs is a word processor, but there's a lot of other things that it can do as well. So this recording will be up. It'll be available for review, and then the document that I was working in that has all the directions kind of as I went. This will be available too for anybody if they want to review it. All right. Does anybody have any questions for me or anything that you want me to go over again, maybe?
Can you show me how you split the screen just now?
Sure.
In that example.
Yep. So I'm hoping that it'll hold the whole time. But if my screen disappears and you can't see it, just let me know. So what I did was I took this one window, Joanne, and I pulled it out. So it's full screen this way, right?
Okay.
And then if I grab the top toolbar in line with where like the X, the minimize and maximize buttons are, and I click and hold, if I drag that and I drag it over to the side of my window, it blinks a little bit and it pops out with like a grayish outline of half my screen. And then if I release that, it'll fill up that half of the screen. And then on the left side, I can pick what other window I have open that I want to fill the other half.
All right.
So yeah, that was all it was. So I just, on that toolbar, click and hold, and then when I drag it around, if I drag it over to the side, the mouse will kind of blink, and then there'll be this box kind of outline. If I take that away, you might see it a little bit better, but if I pull that over, it's kind of like a gray outline, and then when I release it, it'll pop up into that window there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Brian.
sometimes the side-by-side is a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Multitasking and stuff like that. Sorry, was there another question there?
Hey, thanks, Brian. I got to skedaddle. I have an appointment, but I just wanted to say thanks and have a good day, everybody. Thanks. Take care.
Too. Thanks for coming. All right. Anybody else? Other questions?
No, so I guess we'll sign off.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
Sure
All right,
thing.
thank you.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.
Good rest of the
You
week.
too.
Take care.